A big thank you to Vanidia Fortes, Handsome Bana, G83, and Bella for their support on Patreon. Huge spoiler warning for basically the entirety of The Sopranos. If you enjoy, please don't forget to subscribe as it's free and it really helps me out. Alright, enjoy. So, I recently finished watching The Sopranos for the first time. For years, I had heard my parents and older brother make mention of the show, and I remembered bits and pieces from walking in on my family watching when I was younger. For years, they, and basically everyone else who had seen the show, would praise it as arguably the best television show ever made. The writing, direction, and casting all being perfect, and of the cast, how there was no one quite as perfect as James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano. Going into a show or movie with it being hyped up to such an extent can sometimes lead to an underwhelming payoff. As an example, I felt that way with Spirited Away. But, on the other hand, sometimes the payoff is even better, as was the case for The Godfather, which is easily one of my favorite movies and the one I would cite as the greatest ever made. Thankfully, in my case with The Sopranos, I experienced the latter. The Sopranos is, to me, the greatest television show ever made. And, like everyone had said for years, there was nobody quite as compelling or impressive among the cast as James Gandolfini. He, and only he, could have portrayed Tony Soprano. It was the role he was born for. He was able to make Tony look tough, scary, serious, jokey, uncomfortable, and unhinged with greater ease than any actor I'd seen before. But what made his performance, Tony as a character, and The Sopranos as a whole, so compelling weren't the instances in which Tony was a scary mobster, but instead when he was an endearing, loving family man. Finding the balance between these attributes was crucial to the success of The Sopranos, and pulling it all off convincingly through acting was something, again, only Gandolfini could have done. Somehow, Gandolfini made Tony Soprano lovable, the character we would go on to see throughout the series murder countless people, strangers, childhood friends, and family alike. That is no small feat. So, let's take a deeper look and try to see exactly how the writing, alongside Gandolfini's acting, allowed for this to happen. There are many notable instances I could mention, but for the sake of simplicity, I'll only name the moments I think are most important in showing us the good-natured and lovable side of Tony Soprano. But before I do that, let's look at the few things about Tony's character on a broader spectrum to see what makes this fat fucking crook from New Jersey so endearing. One of the biggest things, and one of the main selling points of the series, is that The Sopranos is as much a family drama as it is a mafia drama. We see Tony having to deal with seemingly menial and silly responsibilities unbecoming of a mobster, let alone the boss of a family. Sometimes it's the stuff at home he needs to take care of, like dealing with AJ or arguing over new furniture with Carmela, and other times it's more enjoyable, like going to a football game or attending a concert. Seeing Tony take part in these seemingly everyday activities alongside his criminal ones makes him instantly more relatable. Seeing him with his family and taking part in things surrounding his family makes us root for him, as we start to view a lot of his actions as though they're for the good of his family. Which leads us to one of the first good deeds we see from Tony in the series, sparing Don Hauser. Boca is the 9th episode of the first season of The Sopranos and easily has some of its funniest moments.
I don't go down enough.
That's not what I heard.
About what?
Alongside the relatively lighthearted B-plot, however, is the episode's main focus, which is much more unpleasant, that being Meadows' soccer coach and his treatment towards one of the players. Coach Don Hauser is revealed to be in a sexual relationship with one of his, let's not forget, underage players. The trauma this would understandably cause any young girl leads to her attempting suicide. When Tony and the rest find out about the way this coach has been dealing with the girls on the team, Tony becomes conflicted on what to do. After much debate, he ends by doing the right thing and lets the police do their job. He then celebrates his good deed by getting blind drunk and coming home to tell Carmela. While Tony may not even know where he is in this scene, that doesn't change the fact that in this moment, we're endeared to him. The way he looks up at Carmela, and the way he tells her that he took her advice, is almost like he's seeking approval from her. Little moments like these remind us that despite doing this 4 episodes ago, Tony has a heart. Tony is still capable of doing the noble thing, even if it goes against everything he believes in. Another aspect of Tony's character that makes him so compelling is his vulnerability. One of the best dynamics within the show is between Dr. Melfi and Tony. That relationship between the two was easily one of the show's biggest selling points when it started. The concept of a mafioso who goes to a therapist is admittedly pretty funny. But it reminds us throughout the entire series that, well, Tony's human too. Tony is very capable of having all the same emotions we do, be it insecurity, anxiety, rage, or depression. Once again, the dynamic of The Sopranos showing both aspects of a mobster's life plays in here. In no other mob show or film that I know of do we see this much time with family or civilians. That inherently makes caricatures out of the characters in those stories, which is something that The Sopranos avoids by having Tony have relatable issues like anxiety and depression. And it isn't done poorly either. Seeing as Tony deals with these things in life and continues his sessions with Dr. Melfi, and watching his slow progression to being healthier and more accepting of who he is quite satisfying. In many regards, at least early on, Melfi brings out the best in Tony. Watching as he attempts to take what he learns from his sessions and apply it in his business and family life, or pass the same wisdom to someone else, is really cool, as it makes Tony seem like a real person who's really growing. His compassion comes out most when dealing with Melfi, as it's with her where we see him most often cry, and it's also with her where I think we have one of the best and most heartfelt, genuine moments from the show. And that's in the Season 3 episode, Employee of the Month, one of the series' best episodes, and also one of the hardest to watch. In the episode, Dr. Melfi is attacked and sexually assaulted outside of her office. We see as she struggles with her trauma from the experience throughout the episode, and is seen to be understandably very jumpy. She later learns the identity of the attacker and must consider whether she tells Tony about what happened. In the final scene, she ends up breaking down in front of Tony, and it's here that we see one of my favorite moments from him. The way he gets up to comfort her, unsure if it's the correct thing to do. He asks her what he did, unsure if it may have even been his fault. His concern for her is genuine and very, very sweet. Again, it serves as a great reminder to us that underneath that criminal exterior is a person who still genuinely cares about the people close to him. The idea that Tony may in fact be a sociopath is brought to light to Dr. Melfi in the last handful of episodes in the series. Admittedly, Tony does have a lot of the qualities that you could attribute to sociopathy, however, it's more likely that he's not a full-blown sociopath, and more so a lesser form of one. Proof of this is obvious within the very first episode, in fact, with Tony and the Ducks. While yes, we find out that the reason he cared so much for them was because they represented his own family, his love for them as animals was clear too. And it doesn't stop there. His love for animals is even more prominent with his horse, Pyomai. He is shown tending to the horse on multiple occasions, and cares deeply for it. So much so, in fact, that when Tony suspects that Ralphie killed the horse, Tony beats Ralphie to death. While murdering Ralphie may not endear Tony to us, his love for animals and the generally defenseless is a very simple and effective way for us to connect to him. Like I said earlier, the reason that, at least by most of the show's viewers, Tony was so beloved was because of the moments that made him out to be more than just a mobster. One of my favorite arcs in the entire show was shortly after Tony was shot by a deranged Uncle June and spent some time in a coma. That first of the two-part episode, watching Tony fight off death while going through a confusing and in a way very spiritual journey in his coma, was simply superb. The acting from everyone in these episodes was astounding, Edie Falco in particular. I felt like Tony was fading away, and that was hard to watch, which, again, is shocking, as let's not forget, Tony is a horrible person. But somehow the writers and Gandolfini's acting made it so that you wanted nothing more for than him to wake up, cause, well, you can't help but love him. In only one moment in the series did I ever hate Tony, and it was when he killed Christopher. I was mad for all of one episode, because in the very next, I once again fell in love with his tender and caring side as he saved and comforted AJ after his suicide attempt. Tony Soprano is arguably the best written and most complex character ever conceived for a television show. The show's legacy, Tony Soprano as a character, and James Gandolfini will always live on. The show's impact and the character's impact cannot be understated. As Bryan Cranston said, without Tony Soprano, there is no Walter White.